Before you waste time analyzing the wrong storage deal, or worse, make an offer on a facility in a bad market, watch this video because I'm going to show you how you can quickly break down any storage deal using the exact framework I teach inside the Storage Wins coaching program. And more specifically, you're going to learn how to spot red flags in any market in just minutes, what numbers actually matter and which ones you can ignore, and the exact checklist I use to figure out what a deal is really worth in just a minute. Now, most investors skip these steps, and that's why they end up either overpaying for a storage facility, staying stuck and not even making an offer, or even worse, buying a facility in the wrong market and just being confused about how to move forward. So here is the best part. You're about to get exclusive access to a private Storage Wins group coaching call where I walk my clients through a real life scenario, a deal that popped up in a storage Facebook group that I'm a part of. And this was a conversation I actually had with the seller. So you're going to hear live my thought process, the questions I asked the seller, what I look for in Google Maps, and how I even decide if I'm going to make an offer or if I'm just going to walk away because the deal doesn't make sense. Now, we're about to jump into the call, but make sure you stick around into the end because I'm going to break down the exact formula that you can use to analyze any storage deal. And as a teaser, check out what I find when I zoom out on this market in Google Maps. Let's dive right in. I connected with a storage owner this morning. I wanted to kind of share with you some insights from the call, and then I want you guys to use this as an opportunity to kind of hear me present the deal, so to speak. By the way, I don't know if there's an opportunity here or not, but there could be. And anytime I speak to a storage owner, the idea is to make an offer, particularly if I'm interested in the market. So let me share my screen and we will go from there. All right. So guys, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions at the end of this. And then I want to put you guys into small breakout groups so that you guys can talk about the deal, what you like about it. So here's where I want you to listen to me speak from this lens. What are the pros potentially, if any, right? There might not be any pros, but what are the pros? What are the cons? What are some of the potential pitfalls? What are some of the things you like or don't like about it? And then ultimately, what do you think this is worth today? And what would you potentially offer on this opportunity? Okay. And then Kusky, and I saw Andrew, great to have you, man. I saw Andrew popped in here. So let me kind of share with you guys here. So this came from a Facebook group, and the guy was pretty succinct with how he had his information. You know, oftentimes if you go in these storage Facebook groups, like you'll get people that post with like barely any information, and then you get people that post too much information. I think this guy was like found the sweet spot. It's like, hey, this is a facility I own. I'm interested in selling it. He provided the unit mix. He provided the revenue. He provided like the major details, like the meat that we need to dive into this. And then he provided a bunch of pictures, and pictures sell because I see a lot of deals posted on storage Facebook groups, but this one caught my eye because it just, a lot of green, clean looking facility. So I spent some time looking at this thing earlier today. I had about a 22-minute conversation with the guy. So thank you, Cynthia, by the way, for posting all that. That's awesome. All right. So Burton Self-Storage. This is in Burton, Michigan. Okay. Burton, Michigan. So, here's some pictures. By the way, let me just go all the way to the end. This is the parcel. So initially, the first thing I look at, and by the way, Kusky and Andrew, if you guys feel free to chime in if you want with anything I'm sharing here. But first thing I look at when I look at pictures is my brain is going to a couple different things. It's like, is there room for expansion, right? And clearly you can see there's significant room for expansion. So that's the first thing I'm looking at when I'm looking at an overview picture. All right. So let me go back to the top here and kind of walk you through this document. So again, this is the guy's information. I haven't verified anything. So right now I'm just taking it at face value. He's looking for 1.75 million. It sits on 8 acres. There's 87 units. Now, there's 20 outdoor parking spaces. There's a barn. There's a house, which, by the way, he lives in the house. So he lives on site, and it's got 2,000 square foot offices. All right. So here are some of the things the guy seems like he's done a pretty good job. It's on easy storage solutions. It's fully fenced in. It's got an automated gate, as you can see with bollards and keypad here, LED lights, et cetera, et cetera. Website with 83% of the tenants on automated recurring billing. It's got 25 5-star reviews. And then he's done some work to the barn. So the guy this is not super typical where the guy has done all these things. Here's the unit mix. So by the way, it's these 3 buildings. which each of these buildings I'm going to show you now is about 4,500 square feet. So roughly you're talking about 13,000 square foot of storage. And then you have this barn that is a 60 by 40. So another 2,400 square feet there. You got the house, which is 1,300 square feet, and you got 2,000 square foot offices. So about 13,000 square feet of storage, a little bit more. And then you got about another 6,000 or so square footage between a barn, a house, and some offices. Here's the unit mix, pretty healthy unit mix across the board. Here is the house. Now he has fully renovated the house. And again, this is where he lives with his family. When I had a conversation with him, one of the questions I always ask, and those of you who have bought any type of real estate can attest to this, it's always important to find out why they are selling. What is their motivation? And I never accept the surface level answer they give me, because that may be true. Oftentimes I have found that you got to dig a little bit deeper below the surface. In this particular case, the guy needs the money in order to move. He's outgrown this house. It's about a 1,300 square foot house, family, kids. He's outgrown it and he's looking to move to northern Michigan. I always inquire at some point in the conversation after I feel like I've built some rapport, after I've collected the necessary information. I test the waters when it comes to seller financing. He's open to it, but not really. It would have to be like a very significant down payment because he reiterated the need for the money in order to be able to make the move. Okay. So as you can see here, the guy's done some work to the property. Looks really, really nice. Here's the office, which is not occupied. According to him, he thinks that the office would rent for, each office would rent for about $500. So the two offices combined would collect about $1,000 a month, which right now he's not collecting anything on it. He thinks the house can rent for anywhere between $1,300 and $1,500 a month. Okay. So he thinks the house can rent $1,300 to $1,500 a month. He thinks the offices can rent for $500 each. So $1,000 total. One thing that may or may not sound obvious is trust but verify. I'm going to ask the seller for all this information, but I'm not just going to assume that he's right. In the process of, doing my homework, I'm obviously going to verify these things. And then here's his pro forma, which is basically what he has labeled as current and projected. Sorry, let me go ahead and mute this so it doesn't keep buzzing in my ear. So I asked him right off the bat, because I hadn't seen this. He emailed this to me after. I said, hey, just what's your current revenue at? Like what's your average monthly revenue? And he said it was between 15 and 16,000, which is verified right here in the effective revenue, 15,630. Now he's projecting a 5% vacancy. I tend to be pretty conservative, and when I'm underwriting a facility, like I will bake in anywhere between a 12 to a 15% vacancy, right? Just to be I like to be actually at 15%. There's some people that think that's a little too conservative. I think he's being too aggressive with only 5% vacancy, but you're not going to just take his pro forma. You're going to run your own numbers. He is running very, very lean. A big part of the reason is that he lives on site. He's basically the boots on the ground. He is the manager essentially. And so that is the reason that he is marketing this as an 8.4 cap, when in fact, when you bake in your expenses, whether that's 35 or 40%, that's not going to be the in-place cap rate going in. So anyways, here are the numbers. If you guys want to take a picture on your phone or take a screenshot of this, because you'll need this once you guys go into the breakout rooms. Now, here are his projections. He lives in the house, so obviously he's not making any money on that. If anybody bought this, they likely would not live in the house. So he's projecting $1,500 a month. He also thinks, I forgot to mention this, he also thinks that the barn can be rented for about $1,000 a month. So between the $1,500, the $1,000 for the office, you're talking about $3,500 on top of this effective revenue. And then he thinks you can juice up the parking and the remaining units by X amount of dollars. I haven't had an opportunity to go to the market and look at I've only looked at a few competitors, which I'm going to show you here in a minute. But that is something you're going to want to keep in mind as you go into the breakout rooms. All right. So that is the information that he has provided me. Now, let me actually show you the market. So whenever I look at an opportunity, the first thing I do, Kusky and Andrew and Kenny and others might have a little bit of a different process, but at some point, everybody's pretty much going to do this. I always like to go to Google Street View and just kind of get a lay of the land, right? Like you'd be surprised how much you can gather from just like virtually driving up and down the street to get a sense for is it surrounded by a lot of commercial real estate? Is it more in a residential area? Is there a Dollar General right down the street, which could tell you something potentially about the demographics of the area? There's a lot of things you can get by just virtually driving up and down the street. But as you can see, this is the house right here. This is pre-renovation based on the pictures that I just saw. So looks like he's got a nice, nice big signage. And then the storage facilities back here. So I like to just get a general sense. I see this vacant land in front. So at some point, if I was interested, I'd want to know what this is zoned for, because that could potentially tell me, hey, in the future, if a developer comes in, what could be on here? Right. So that's just a side note. I'll take a look as to see if there's any vacant parcels around the area. Now I like to actually go overview. And so I want to zoom out a little bit, and you can see the storage facilities right here. One of the things that caught my eye about this is that it's paved, which I really like. And it looks like it doesn't really have a lot of deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance meaning it doesn't look like this facility needs a lot of CapEx, capital expenditures. Now, as Dan can attest to, and as Kate can attest to, Casey and others that have done on-site due diligence, one thing is looking at a bunch of pictures. Another thing is when you actually get your boots on the ground, like i.e. your feet, and you start to see things, you're going to notice things that are hard to pick up in pictures sometimes. So whenever I look at a facility like this, I will zoom out. And now I just want to get a general sense of the city, right? Do I see a lot of farmland? And that tells me that it's very rural. Do I see a lot of gas stations, Hardee's, Starbucks? Like, what pops out at me? So as I zoom out here, you can tell here that, the heart of the city seems to be like right around here. And then I will get a general sense for where this is located in the state of Michigan, right? And I want to see how close or far is it to the next major city. So you can see Lansing is just north of this. Detroit obviously is all the way down here. So I'm going to pause here for a second. Any questions so far about anything that I've covered? Okay. Kusky, Andrew, is there anything else that you guys look at just initially when you're looking at an opportunity and you pop it into Google? Is there anything else that you would add, or is that pretty much it, what I've covered so far?
Yeah. I'll normally just jump in and I'll put the address in, and then in Google Maps, then I'll hit self-storage and just try to find other facilities real quick and just try to get an idea of, are there rates at street or below street? Just kind of get a quick idea of upside there.
Exactly right. And that was my next tab right here. So Kusky, spot on. Next thing you want to do is you go to Google Maps. You type in the address, and then you click that nearby button and you type in self-storage. So all these red dots is the Google map pack, right? These are all the storage facilities that Google's picking up. Now, it does not mean that these are all the storage facilities. In fact, it's possible there could be some random little facility somewhere around here that doesn't have a Google My Business, that isn't being picked up by Google. Whenever you come across those, they are potential opportunities. Add them to your list. Now, the next thing that I look at here when I'm kind of doing an overview is I want to know, are there any major REITs in the area? REITs being REIT, Real Estate Investment Trust. And you can see that Public Storage is right here. Public Storage is also right here. Storage Rentals of America, I don't know if they're considered a REIT, but they're a pretty big nationwide operator. In fact, one of my Jackson, Mississippi properties I bought from Storage Rentals of America. So I don't love that. I don't love that I'm going to be competing against Public Storage, right? And Public Storage, I mean, you're talking about a different class of property, and they typically play the game of like bring people in as cheap as possible, then jack up their rates a month or 2 months later. So it's not a deal breaker for me to be in a market with other REITs, because look, I bought and sold 2 facilities in Jackson, Mississippi that had REITs. I just don't like it. I don't love it. So I'm sharing these things with you because I want you thinking about pros and cons and like how I'd look at and evaluate opportunities before I even dig into the numbers. There's another thing that caught my eye here, and I'm going to just kind of pause here. I'm going to leave this screen on. Can any of you pick up what else jumped out at me here?
I mean, what's going on to the east? Like, is what's going to the right of the map there?
Yeah. There's a lot of greenery here. So now this does look like residential. You can see these neighborhoods like this all looks like residential here. So yeah, it's a good point, Gabe. It's like you definitely, to Gabe's point, you want to know, is there development going on? Like one thing I might do, and I've spoken about this with Andrew, and I think it's Kenny as well, is I will look around the facility, and if there's residential, I'll drop my little dude here, and I'll like right here, Judd, just to get a sense for like what type of product are we talking about. So this looks like lower to middle income, maybe, right? There's maybe some Section 8 housing in some of these neighborhoods. You know, it doesn't look, you know, you got your little local convenience store here. So doesn't look like the best of areas. It doesn't look like a war zone either, but I like to just get a general sense of the real estate product, if that makes sense. Like what kind of housing do you have in and around the area? But there's something else that caught my eye. By the way, take a look at this right here. That is a lot of storage. Pretty sexy, actually. That's got to be Anthony, Andrew, what would you guys guess square footage wise we have here?
200,000.
It's got to be north of 150,000 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot. That's a lot of storage. So, and I'm seeing a lot of red dots here. So I haven't gone to TrackIQ and I haven't done the math, but something would tell me that there's a lot more supply of storage than there is demand, is my initial gut without really looking at that. But there's something else that caught my eye. Take a look right.
I'm not even looking at that. What's that area right to the east of it that looks just totally different layout? Just to the right of your mouse. No, you were just on Judd. Keep going, keep going.
Right here?
Down. No, there's one there, but yeah, there's one that looks like a little further south of that. Same thing. Is that just in industrial areas? Like those two, you were up in the one and then the other one, right? You see Burton's self-storage and then right past that. Is that just all industrial? Right past there. Yeah.
You think right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like all that's like industrial.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, this looks very industrial. So it's super important to just get a general lay of the lands, right? But this caught my eye. Has anybody heard of Flint, Michigan?
Mm-hmm.
Flint, Michigan is probably one of the poorest cities in the country based on what I've heard. So obviously, especially with my history in being in very poor areas in Jackson, Mississippi, I know what it's like to look at a deal that might look good on paper, but it's in a really depressed market. So I was like, okay, well, this is in Burton, Michigan. How far is this from Flint, Michigan? It's like a 5 to 10 minute drive to Flint. Don't love that. Don't love that right now. When I'm talking to the guy on the phone, if possible, sometimes I like to go to Google while I'm having the conversation. If you feel you can stay focused on the conversation, I didn't do that. I was just on the call. I wasn't. So when he said Burton, Michigan, I didn't know that happened to be basically right next to Flint. So anyway, something to keep in mind is you want to get a general sense for the market and the area. So yeah, look, Catherine says Flint has a poverty rate of 38.9%. It's really sad. Yeah, Flint is a very, very, very depressed market. Now, with that being said, I went to census.gov and I put in Burton City, Michigan. And to my surprise, there's about 29,000 people. You can see that the population has been declining little by little. Very small declines, but nevertheless, it's been declining. Back in 2010, it was 30,000. Then 2020, dropped a couple hundred. 2023 dropped, 7, 8 people. And then now, according to this, it's, so it's lost about 600-700 people in the last decade. That's not a lot, but again, it's probably not the best market. I thought the median household income was going to be a lot less than what it actually is, but 57,000 is what census.gov is saying. I would probably want to verify that in a few other places. Now, the per capita income in the past 12 months, $30,000. Persons in poverty, this is saying 17%. Kate has 39%. Either way, even if it was 17%, that's pretty high. It's basically 1 out of 5 people basically are in poverty.
Pardo, untracked. So, and untracked isn't always right. Sometimes there's duplicates. So without digging in it, 1 mile, you're 41 square foot per capita. 3 miles, you're 17, and 5 miles, you're 11. So as you get out there, the income gets a little better, goes up to 70,000 household. 3 miles is 59,000 household. And the 1 mile is, why is that not updating on me? 45,000 household. And then in 1 mile, there is, I think, where the heck did I just see? Like 30 something. What the heck was it? Like 30 something storage facilities. Oh, no, 5 in a mile, 19 in 3 miles, and 29 in 5 miles.
So there's 19 storage facilities in a 3 mile radius.
19 in 3 miles. Yeah.
Okay, right. So the purpose of this was to make it a case study, right? So which we're doing. Clearly, this is not a facility that I'm recommending anybody to go after, but that's not the point of this exercise. The point of this exercise is to have you guys see through the lens of how we initially look at a potential opportunity and what you guys think this is worth based on what he shared and what you would offer if you liked the market. Okay. Are there any questions, Andrew? Anything to add, brother?
Yeah, I just had one thing. If you zoom in on the property a little bit,
Zoom in on Burton. Where's Burton? Let's see here. Burton. Where is it?
Right to your left. Yep, that one. So if you know, zoom out a little bit more.
Zoom out.
Yep. So one thing I'm also looking at is like it's been going down in the past couple years in terms of percentage of leads that come from drive-by traffic, but it's still in the 35 to 40% range in terms of people seeing your facility and reaching out. And you can notice a lot of these other facilities are on these main thoroughfare roads, whereas Burton is kind of this offshoot road. Not, it's still convenient to that big residential area right there, but there's also other ones that are convenient as well that have a little bit more visibility. And so I would want to make sure that, if you did move forward, that there's a good marketing plan in place to bring people in, because it's in more of that industrial area, you might get people that are driving there to those buildings that work in those buildings. But other than that, unless you live on that street, you're probably not going to get a ton of drive-by traffic.
Yeah, no, Andrew, great point, man. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, it's not in the corner of the county or the city and like nobody's going to see it. But to Andrew's point, take a look at public storage and look at all this traffic that you're going to have. AmeriGuard storage centers, like it's off of Saginaw and East Maple Ave. This one, like this is probably not going to have as much visibility as some of these others. So there's a lot of red flags that I see about the market that we just highlighted and talked about, but hopefully this was helpful to give you guys, whether you just joined the community or you've been with us for close to a year, whatever the case is, hopefully like you're running through your checklist, right? Of really quick, before we get back to the video, if you are serious about buying your first storage facility within the next 6 to 12 months, so that you could generate more cash flow, build wealth, and ultimately just have more freedom, I want to just take a moment to invite you to apply for the Storage Wins coaching program. So head over to storagewins.com/apply, and we'll schedule a call to speak so we can share with you how we can help you buy your first storage facility within the next 6 to 12 months. Now let's get back to the video. What to look for? What are some of the things? I always like to look at storage as like being putting a puzzle together. And these are all little puzzle pieces that we're getting to see what kind of picture it tells us. What's the story here? So with that being said, guys, I don't know that we're going to have time for breakouts, and we're a relatively small group on this particular call. So I think I'd like to call an audible, and we'll just keep everything in-house here. So here's what I'd like to do is, based off of the information that I've shared with you and I've presented to you guys. Oh, by the way, here is 2 more things to share with you. Here is his website. So he's got a typical standard ESS, Easy Storage Solutions website. Here are his rates. So another thing I look at if I'm looking at a storage facility and they have a website is I want to know if they have a waiting list or if I can rent every single unit that they have. So I will just quickly scan down and see if I see waiting list, or if it says call now is what you'll typically see. And this, okay, so his 20 by 30 waiting list. The more of these that you see, it's a pretty strong indicator that there's demand in that market for storage, right? Sounds pretty obvious. I mean, they're full. He's got a waiting list. So it looks like, and by the way, he shared this with me. He said that there's demand for the larger units in this market. Based on what I'm seeing on his website, that checks off. Obviously, I'm going to verify that if I'm interested in this market, which I'm not. But if I was, I would contact the other competitors in the area and I would cross-check that to see, do other competitors have a waiting list? So that's one thing I look at. The other thing that I look at is the 10 by 10. I'll go to the 10 by 10 just to get a sense for what's the price per square foot. So if they're getting 75 bucks, it's 75 cents a foot. Why? 10 by 10 is 100 square feet. Getting 75 bucks a month, that's 75 cents a square foot. I will use that 10 by 10 number, that's 75 cents a square foot, to compare it to the other 10 by 10s. So as an example, I might go to, here, let me go and pick, I don't know, any one of these. Let me see. Let me find one. I don't want to go to a public storage. This is Burton. So let's go to Flint self-storage. And let's look at the Flint 10 by 10. Now, obviously, if I decide to like go deeper, if in my quick analysis, like Anthony was sharing earlier, if it seems like it's got legs and it passes the initial sniff test within the first 2 to 3 minutes, and then you go into a deep underwriting, then I'm going to actually run it through the spreadsheet. I'm going to get all the rates of all the competitors, and I'm going to see, and I'm going to compare the average of the street rates to the subject facility street rates. And as you can see here, okay, there we go. So I'm going to go immediately to reserve your unit. So check this out. They are partnered with U-Haul, it seems like. It seems like U-Haul is their management company, is what it appears. So I think, okay, so here's Flint. View rates, Flint self-storage, and I'm going to go immediately to the 10 by 10. So the 10 by 10, they're actually asking 95 bucks a month. And it says here 1 unit left, which may or may not be true. Oh, but this is climate. So that is one thing you have to make sure that you're looking at apples to apples, right? The subject facility is drive up, non-climate. So you can't compare it to a climate. So I'm going to scroll down here. It looks like all of these units are climate. So this is probably not the best facility to look at in terms of just trying to get a sense. So let me just see if I can find the better one here really quick. If you guys have any questions. Okay, look, Storage Sense. It's literally right up the street from Burton. So I actually looked at this one prior to the call. Take a look at this. What jumps out at you guys? Take a look at the rates. What jumps out at you guys as I scroll through the rates here?
I mean, they look super cheap.
Bingo. That's one. So, I mean, look at this. A 10 by 15 drive up, 150 square feet of storage. According to them, their regular rate is 59 bucks, but they have significant promotions. Andrew, when you see a bunch of promotions, like what does that tell you?
Tells me they're desperate for occupancy.
Yep. Not only that, I will look at it and see, okay, well, maybe they're running a promo on only certain size units because maybe they're just trying to fill up the smaller units. But if I look at, and they're not running promotions on the larger units, but as you scroll down here, they pretty much have a promo on everything except for, now they have a 10 by 10 drive up that they have a wait list. So it seems like this is on brand with this facility does have a need for the larger units, or the larger units is the product that most people are gravitating towards, not the smaller units. But I don't love to see, now I will cross-check and look at other competitors to see if other competitors are also running promotional rates. If you see a lot of competitors running promo rates, not a great sign. That means that they're thirsty for occupancy, right? They're doing what they can to try to drive in. The other thing I jumped out at is that, like, take a look at this. $37 for a 10 by 30. I think it was Rhonda. Did Rhonda? So Rhonda pays in her market 275 bucks for a 10 by 10. Now again, you know, completely different market. But I mean, that is super, super, super cheap. So with all that said, again, my plan was to kind of put you guys into breakout groups, but I think I'd rather just kind of keep it in here based off of the numbers, based off of like everything I've shared. Let's start with what are the pros? And if you guys just want to unmute yourself and throw it out there, like what are some of the potential pros with this facility?
I mean,
Room to expand.
yeah.
Room for expansion. Okay. Anything else?
Looks like it's well taken care of, at least from the photos.
Yep. Looks like it's well taken care of. I think this is a positive. Depending on how you look at it, right? Like some people might want to, these are pretty easy things to implement for the most part. And so I would much rather it not have this and get a great price than expect to pay a premium just because he's done all the work. So Depends how you look at it. But I mean, it seems like he's done a pretty good job in terms of like all the stuff that we would want to do if we bought this facility. Automated gate on ESS. You know, he's been focusing on the online reputation. You know, he's remodeled the house, the barn, the offices. So those are some definitely some positives, I think. Now, for me, based on my buy box, and this isn't to influence you guys, the fact that it has a house isn't really a pro for me. In fact, that's more of a con for me because I don't want to be a landlord. Now, and Dan can speak to this because he just finished an on-site due diligence in Louisiana. This can also be valuable for a potential boots on the ground. The one thing personally I don't like about having a house on a storage facility is your insurance can go up significantly, because it introduces an extra layer of liability. Obviously, people are going to be cooking in here. Like when somebody lives on site, risk goes up in the eyes of the the insurance company, which makes sense, right? So it's got some pros, it's got some cons in terms of that. Now, any other pros before we shift to the cons? Okay, no other pros. Cons. What are some of the cons based on what you guys have seen here?
Well,
He's already at it.
Flint, Michigan.
So the market, that's a pretty big one. You can't change the market, right?
Market and the public storage guys, those big, there's like 3 big boxes like real close by, and they all have sexy frontage space where we don't. So it's kind of like worse.
By the way, look at this one right over here. You got CubeSmart, that's 4.1 miles away.
Also not good.
The biggest con, the biggest con is the market. The second biggest con is you don't want to buy storage in a market that is overly saturated with storage, because what are you going to do to push the rates and increase your occupancy? And even if I'm taking this guy at face value that he's about 90% occupied, he says there's room for growth, but of course, what's he going to say? If there is room for growth, it's probably not that much. Like he's probably close to the ceiling, would be my guess. Andrew brought up a good point. You'd have to check the traffic count, but probably not the best traffic, drive-by traffic right here, Burton, at least not compared to the competitors. So those are some of the cons. Now, put all that to the side. Let's say you guys like the market, okay? Let's say you guys like the market. What would you offer on this facility? He's asking 1.75, but don't be influenced by what the seller's asking. The seller can ask for whatever they want. You have to make an offer that obviously makes sense to you and potentially package the offer or structure the offer in a way that it could potentially make sense to the seller as well. So what would you, if this was a good market and if it checked a lot of the boxes that we look for, right? You got job growth coming in, population is increasing, healthy medium household income, population size at 30,000 is right within our striking distance. So what, let me actually go to the numbers here. Okay.
It'd probably have to be like an 8 to 10 cap if I was going to throw a number out there.
Okay.
Based off NOI, that's probably where I would start. But yeah, you're pulling up the numbers here. So what's the NOI on it?
So right now, according to his current NOI is 12,262, Brian.
So 147 a year.
147 a year. I'm sorry. Yeah. The 12,262 is monthly. Gabe's spot on. 147,000 is his current NOI. Now, again, guys, keep in mind, I believe his NOI is inflated because his expenses are so low. He's managing this thing himself. You guys are obviously not going to manage it yourself unless you happen to live in that market. And even if you did, I wouldn't recommend you manage it yourself. So what is $40,000 divided by his effective revenue? What's 40,000 divided by 187?
Like 21% expense ratio. It's probably like,
there you go.
So half, maybe.
Gabe and Kate are spot on. So he's operating this thing at 21% expense ratio, which is extremely lean. I'm not saying that's impossible. I'm saying that's highly unlikely that you're going to get anywhere close to a 21%, especially operating it remotely. So your expense ratio, I would be underwriting this thing. If I was being conservative, probably 40%. Maybe you can get down to mid 30s, 35% or so. So this is his NOI, but let's take his effective revenue of 187 at face value, even though he's projecting a 5% vacancy, which I wouldn't do. I would project a 12 to 15% vacancy, right? Especially with the plan to go in and raise the rates. What do you guys think your NOI would be if you were to buy this facility from day one with your expenses?
Like 110 grand.
I came up with the same ballpark. How'd you get there, Dan?
Took the annual gross, 208,000, put,
206?
sorry, 206. Put 40% expenses on it and a average of, I think I used 85% occupancy and then
Okay.
just used a 8 to 10 cap on it.
Does everybody, let me get out of speaker view so that I can see everybody. Hold on one
And
second.
then factored in that I wouldn't want to be in that market, so it better be a smoking deal.
Okay. I want to see everybody here really quick for a second. Let me just go to gallery. Did everybody follow the quick math that Dan did there? And if you didn't, like, please let me know.
Yeah, if you could walk through that would be helpful.
Yeah, Dan, can you walk through that, brother?
Yeah, for sure.
In fact,
So-
why don't you do this? Do you have a calculator in front of you, or are you on a spreadsheet?
No, but I can pull one up here.
Yeah, you don't have to bring up an underwriting spreadsheet, but just a quick calculator here. I'm going to make you co-host, Dan, so you can share your screen.
All right.
But by the way, while Dan's doing that, Brian, I think what you're going to find, dude, with all your experience in multifamily, underwriting this is not much different.
Yeah,
Um,
no, 100%.
okay. So we have 206,000 roughly. I'll make that bigger. And then multiplied by 0.4 for expenses, roughly, and then 0.85 for occupancy.
Dan, do you multiply by 0.4 or do you multiply by 0.6 to just back out the 40% expenses? There you go.
Good call.
Yeah, no worries. No, I don't want anybody to get confused.
And that spit out, I think that was the number, and then just divided by 0.08 and divided by 0.1 or multiplied by 10.
All right, so hold on, because I want to make sure everybody's crystal clear. Like, walk us through line item by line item and explain it.
Yeah. So the 206,000 gross, and then the average expense ratio is 35 to 40% expenses. So since it's a smaller facility, I put 40% expenses.
Mhm.
And
All right,
then
so in other words, you're multiplying the revenue that they're showing. You're gonna back out 40% expense ratio, so you're gonna multiply by 0.60, right, or by 60%.
Yep.
So if you guys, just to follow along, if you guys do 206,000 times 0.6, that's gonna give you 123,600, and that's the NOI. That's the net operating income before you back out any vacancies. Right? You have revenue of 206, you have expenses of 40%, which is whatever that number is. So 206 times 0.6 to back out the 40%. That's going to give you the NOI. Revenue minus expenses is NOI. But then we're also going to be conservative and we're going to back out 15% of vacancy. So then if you do 123,600, which is that NOI, times 0.85, again, because I'm backing out, I'm assuming it's going to be 15% vacant. That gives you 105,060 is the number I got, Dan.
yeah, I'll update that.
Yep, 105,060. Does everybody follow up into there? Thumbs up, everybody? Okay. If anybody's not clear, please unmute yourself. Okay, and then, okay, so now we have the NOI, the net operating income. Dan, take it from here. What's the 0.08?
8 cap,
Okay.
and it's just applying an 8 cap valuation to it, which comes out to 1.3 million, and then you can divide by 0.1 or just multiply it by 10 to get the a 10 cap valuation.
Okay. How do you, and anybody else that has any thoughts, how do you determine what cap rate you're going to apply as a valuation? Like, how did you land on an 8 cap instead of a 7 cap, instead of a 9 cap, instead of a 12 cap? Like, what's your thought process here?
I usually don't, I guess it's just for quick math. I usually don't pay too much attention to the cap rate that I want to purchase a facility for, more look at what's it doing now and what can I bring it to be? So just for quick math purposes,
Yep.
to give a valuation, I'll start with 8 to 10
Okay.
and then dig into it more if it looks appealing.
Yep. By the way, and I think Andrew, you can back me on this or push back on this. I think it's overstated. I hear a lot of people in storage talk about like, hey, what cap rate did you buy it at? I don't want to say I don't care, but I kind of don't care. I'm more concerned about the cap rate on an exit. In other words, when I'm selling a facility than I am when I'm buying. Why? Because really what I'm concerned with is like, what's it doing today? What could it be doing conservatively based on the market, based on, the things I plan to do to the facility. And I'm going to base my offer on leaning towards more what it's doing today, but I'm also going to factor in some upside. Andrew, I've heard you talk about this in the past, brother. How do you think about cap rate when it comes to underwriting deals?
Yeah, again, the only time I would use it is kind of how Dan used it here. If it's like really quick, just back a napkin calculation. But if I'm actually evaluating a property, I really don't even look at it, except for the exit cap. So I am going to look at the market and see is it tertiary, secondary, primary, what's, is it class A, class B, class C property, all to kind of land conservatively on where I think the cap rate would be if I wanted to sell it. But that's really where that would end. I don't usually look at it on the front end.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you have a particular, I don't want to call it a graph or something, but like, let's say it's a class A facility in a rural market or a class B facility in a secondary market. Like, how do you typically apply a cap rate based on the class of the facility and the market that it's in?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of just have a gut feel now, just in conversations with brokers and looking at deals and stuff. But I think that there are, I do have something that, I think John Lindsay had sent me at one point that has a breakdown. I would say that the cap rates where I'm at is if it was in a primary market and it's a class A property, you're probably in that 6 to 6.5% range. Like this is talking like brand new, really nice climate control, multi-story, these are going to be, definitely a lower cap rate.
Yeah.
And then on the other opposite end of the spectrum, tertiary market, smaller facility, not great upkeep, and, just drive up units. You'd probably be looking at like a, 8 to 9 cap. So that kind of gives you your bookends of like what a broker would tell you how they would list it. Whether it sells for that or not, is kind of up in the air. But that's, if you're talking to brokers, that's kind of the sense that I would get on the market. So you're going to be somewhere in that, 6 to 9% range, but I would imagine nobody in this room is looking to buy, a 6% cap rate. That's more if you have a ton of money and you're just kind of looking to park it in it's the same thing with multifamily. If you're buying a class A brand new apartment, it's usually more for preservation of wealth, not for building wealth. So, most of the stuff we're looking at is going to be in that 7 to 9% range, I would imagine.
Yep. Okay. Dan, did you finish? So guys, all Dan did was, and thank you, Andrew and Dan, for some of that clarification. When you take the NOI and you divide it by a cap rate, it just gives you the valuation. And again, this is just meant to do some quick, dirty, back of the napkin math. And ultimately what you're trying to figure out is like, so this particular seller is asking 1.75. Dan, what was the number you came up with? An 8 and a 10 cap? Like what was the valuation based on what they're sharing with your expenses and your vacancy rate?
It was, I'll share quickly here again.
So 1 million to 1.3 basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Whenever you talk to sellers, and I asked this question to the seller, I said, and I already knew that I wasn't going to be getting, first of all, I didn't know it was right, basically Flint, Michigan. If I would have known that, I may have still talked to him just to build the relationship, but I'm just not interested in that market. But I didn't know that on the phone call. So I asked him, and I already knew based off of like the square footage, the revenue, I knew I wasn't getting anywhere close to 1.75 unless I was getting some ridiculously crazy seller finance terms. And he already told me, hey, I would probably need like $1 million down if I was going to do seller financing. So I knew that was out of the equation. I told him, I said, hey, listen, if I'm going to look at this, if I'm interested in making an offer, by the way, here's a nuance. Even if I know I'm interested in making an offer, I'm not going to say that. I always want to stay a step behind the seller. So I don't want to chase the deal. I don't want to chase him. If anything, I want him to chase me as a buyer. So I plant the seed of doubt. Hey, don't think this is going to work for me. If I did decide to make an offer, would it make sense to put it in writing? Because I know I'm not going to be able to get close to your asking price. Or hey, if I'm not going to be in the ballpark of what you're looking for, would it even make sense to put it in writing? Now, I don't really care if he says yes or no, because if I like the market, I'll still make an offer even if he tells me no. Because I have bought properties when people tell me, hey, there's no way I'm taking less than X. And then a month or 2 or 3 or 6 later, guess what? They're taking less than X. So I'll still make the offer if I like the market and if I like what I see. And what was his answer? He said, yeah, absolutely. Put it in writing. So right after, like right from the jump, he told me he's asking 1.75, but he knows he's very aggressive on that number. Now, would he take 1 to 1.3? Doesn't really matter. Maybe not, but that would be the number. If this was a good market, that would be the range of what could make sense, assuming you felt, based on what you saw in the competition, that it had the potential value of, more than what obviously you'd be buying it for. Guys, does that all make sense? Okay. Rhonda, you good there? Cool. JD? Okay. Gabe, what do you got, man? Were you going to jump in?
I'm just curious for you and Andrew. Like I keep hearing you guys say you don't look at the cap rate when you're buying. It's more of an exit thing. So what are you looking at? And I guess the second part of that is how my brain immediately goes to, like, how am I paying for this? Am I raising money? Am I paying investors? Am I doing debt financing? And I create a layer there. So how do you approach that, I guess?
Yeah. Andrew, you want to go first and then I'll follow up, or?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the two main things that I'm looking at are, like you said, cash flow. What's my cash flow after paying expenses and debt service? And what's the cash flow look like over the life of the project? The other thing is kind of the increase in value. Where am I buying it? Where am I anticipating selling it? Those are kind of the two return metrics that I'm looking at when I'm evaluating, is this going to be worth my time? Because this is going to be, you're going to be putting in time, managing, doing all this stuff. What's going to be the return on that? And is that worth it to me? If we're going to do all this and we're going to make, after 5 years, we've raised the value 50 grand and we've cash flowed 2 grand a year. What's the point? I just wasted my time, other than learning and growing and, just the experience, which isn't to be cut short, but, nobody's going to want to do that, spend all those hours for no return. So that's that's what I evaluate. Second, you mentioned, your funding. That's the other thing that you're looking at. If you're going to be raising money, then obviously it's not just about your return, but it's about, how am I going to get investors a return on this? And is there enough meat on the bone for me to make it worth my time to do this, and for my investors to walk away with a great return as well? So those are the things that I'm looking at and evaluating in that range of outcomes. We've talked about that before, kind of having the bracket of possible outcomes of low, medium, high range of outcomes. And on the low end, like, everything crashes and burns, like, I just want to make sure that we can survive and I'm not risking capital. It's not that, in that low scenario, everything goes bad, that I'm still making a 10% return. It's like, we're going to be okay. Everything goes wrong, but we've also, the the actual what I think is going to happen is giving me those things that I'm looking for. And there's also the possibility of a higher upside than that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, dude, I think you hit the nail on the head. First of all, when I underwrite the deal, I'm assuming it's going to be bought cash, even though in most cases it's not. I just want to know, what do the numbers look like? What's my cash on cash return? In other words, I'm putting X amount of dollars into this and it's giving me X back on an annual basis. What is that cash on cash return? Then I will start to go through the different the financing layering options. If I was going to put 25% down and get a bank loan for 75% of the purchase price at an interest rate that's, right in the middle of the pack of where interest rates are today, I would look at what's my monthly debt service. I'll run that through a financial calculator, based on a 20 or a 25-year amortization. And I'll figure out, okay, my annual debt service is $4,000 a month. That's $48,000 a year. So my NOI, I've already factored out expenses to get to my NOI. NOI minus my debt service gives me my cash flow, right? So hold on, let me just admit Todd while he's coming in. That'll give me my cash flow. So I'm looking at what is my cash flow end of year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. And then I'm looking at, okay, what's my exit strategy here? Do I plan to turn this thing around and sell it in 2 or 3 years? If so, based on my increased revenue and NOI, what is the value at a cap rate I think I can sell this at? Let's say I was going to sell this in the future at an 8 cap, or if I wanted to be conservative, let's say I was going to sell it at a higher cap rate, 8.5 cap. What is the value at the end of year 2? At the end of year 3? And to Andrew's point, okay, well, let's say the value is 150 grand higher. Is it worth it for me to do this deal, right? There's not much upside when I factor in a broker commission, some closing cost. Is it worth it for me to take on this project to make X? Maybe, maybe not, right? That depends on you and your goals. So I'm looking at cash flow, I'm looking at the upside, and then I'm looking at the different ways I could finance this. If I was going to buy this 100% private money and pay 10% interest, let's say 1.75. Okay, well, that's 172 grand a year, 175 grand a year, I think, in debt service. Right? Is my math right there? If I was going to buy this with cash, yeah, it is, right? Times 10%. Yeah, 175 grand a year in debt service. So could the facility afford that? And if so, what's my cash flow there? What if I find, so I'm just running through different scenarios to help me figure out what I would need, like how my offer would need to be structured in order for it to hit my goals. And if I'm bringing on investors or equity partners, like to hit their goals. It's a complicated answer, but I want you to simplify it and just take it step by step. Look at the cash flow, look at the upside, look at the different ways and what layering on the different financing ways you can finance it, what that does to the cash flow. What if you brought in an equity partner to fund, and the equity partner said, hey, I want 75% of the deal, right? Okay, well, that means 25 is left for me to operate it. What am I looking at there in terms of cash flow and in terms of upside in the back end? Is that worth it for me? So that's kind of how our brain thinks about these and how we're starting to put the pieces of the puzzle together. But here's what I would encourage you guys not to do. Just because you don't have X amount of dollars in your bank account right now, that doesn't matter to me. I don't want you to filter through your current situation, because if it's a strong, strong deal, there's a way to make that deal happen. And that's why that is the one area within phase 2 of this program, which is financing, funding, like how do you structure the deal, that you should be working simultaneously with your marketing and lead gen and acquisition efforts on phase 1. The time to look for the money is not when you get the deal. Hopefully you've planted the seeds and watered the grounds so that when you find the opportunity, you can pick up the phone and you already have a warm relationship there with people who have raised their hand and expressed interest in getting involved in a project with you.
Cool. Thanks. Appreciate it. Both you guys.
I know that's a loaded answer, but there's layers to it. Brian, Rhonda, JD, Kate, Dan, anyone else?
I had a question.
Yeah, JD, fire away, man.
It's kind of off topic what we're talking about now, but when I inquired about a storage facility close to me about a week and a half ago, it was the first time that they had sent me back an NDA to sign before they disclosed all the details of the deal. I figured that was pretty common practice with the storage facilities, and I was just gonna ask about kind of the basic breakdown of how those NDAs work whenever you sign them and get all the details of the deal and all that.
Yeah, that's not uncommon. I mean, just general good practice is to read anything before you sign it, obviously, but those are pretty standard for the most part. You know, it's a non-disclosure, right? So you're not going to go out there and, you know, share the information with anyone type of thing. Yeah, I don't have any objections to signing an NDA, provided it's, you know, not anything out of the ordinary.
What's the main thing that they're trying to avoid dealing with when they have somebody like us sign the NDA?
They don't want you going directly to the owner, right? They just want to control the flow of communication. They want all the communication to flow through them, which, by the way, you always respect. I mean, one way to burn a bridge, a relationship bridge, or develop a reputation is, you know, going around people's backs. Not obviously nobody here would do that, but if a property's listed with a broker, I'm not calling that facility. Like, I'm gonna go through the broker, right? If a wholesaler brings me an opportunity, I'm never gonna, you know, go to Google, find out the phone number and call the facility. I'm going to go through the wholesaler, right? So whoever brings you the deal, as a general rule of thumb, that's who you should keep your unless otherwise, you know, unless they tell you otherwise.
Okay.
I've worked with wholesalers that are like that. There's so much trust built in me that they're like, well, dude, if you want to just call the owner and get this in, like, but they know I would never like stab them in the back or screw them. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Okay. See, I thought I was reaching out to the owners directly. It was just the email, phone number on the site. And so that's cool info to learn. It might be a broker that I was talking to and not the actual owner. I thought it was the owner.
Find out. So like that guy, I spoke to this guy, his name's Kevin. I spoke to this guy, Kevin, this morning. I said, hey, Kevin, just so that I understand your relationship to the deal, do you own this facility, or because I saw in his Facebook that it had his name -broker, but I think he's a residential broker based on his Facebook profile, which, by the way, that's a side note. Whenever I communicate with a wholesaler, a broker, an owner, if I can get their social media profiles and get a little bit of intel on them before the conversation or during the conversation, super helpful, because now I have ways to build further rapport with that person. If I see they're into sports or whatever, I can talk about sports. If I see they have kids, I can talk about kids. Make it be genuine, obviously, like never lie. But yeah, find out. In other words, hey, are you the broker? Like, what's your relationship to the deal? Do you own it? Are you the broker? You know, are you the middleman here? Are you wholesaling it? Like, I don't care what it is. Just tell me what it is.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Any other thoughts or comments or questions here? We're at the top of the hour.
Just some feedback, Alex. This is really helpful, at least for someone who's newer to the space, just to see deals and see how you guys analyze stuff. So just for what that's worth, I don't know if you guys get as much value out of it, but I could do this almost every week, so appreciate it.
I'm glad. No, that's really valuable feedback. We will definitely be doing more of this for sure. And hopefully, guys, I've said this so many times, but I'm going to keep saying it. Remember LMAO, remember that framework, right? Every single day, build your list. Every single day, have meaningful conversations with owners and with key people. Every single day, analyze, like what we did here. Do this on your own, or even better, drop something in the school community. Pick up the phone, send a group text to a bunch of people within this community. Hey guys, tomorrow from 1 to 2, I'm analyzing deals. Here's a Zoom link for anybody that wants to jump in, and we can analyze some deals together. It's so helpful. Like what Gabe just said, doing this and collaborating amongst each other and looking at deals can have such an exponential positive impact on your ability to quickly see things, because each of you are going to maybe pick up on something that you didn't, and vice versa. You might see something that the other person didn't. Like, perfect example, Andrew said earlier, he brought up, hey, the traffic, and look at I hadn't, like, that escaped me, and yet I know better. Like, that's definitely one of the things you look at. And he picked up on that. And so it's super helpful to collaborate with each other. But you guys got to take that initiative. Don't wait for somebody to do it. And even if nobody shows up, you were going to spend that hour anyways analyzing deals. So the A is analyze deals every single day. And then eventually, guys, I want you to get comfortable enough to make offers on a weekly basis. If you're not making offers, you're not going to be doing deals. Unless you're just going to invest as an LP, as a limited partner, and you know that's different. But there's some of you in that boat that are looking to invest on the LP side. But I think for the most part, most of you guys want to find these deals, control it and operate it, or find the deals and wholesale it. So yeah, Gabe, we'll definitely do more of this, man. Brian, I see Kate always smiling. I love it. Kate, anything to add? You and Dan are, by the way, Kate, I feel like you always share a win, but like Kate's getting closer and closer on her first deal. I don't know if you have anything to add there, Kate.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the on the due diligence checklist in the pre-close phase, which is like getting the LLC set up, operating agreement with the attorney, just kind of getting all those things ready for close. So, and there's been a ton of questions throughout this whole process. So, just as many questions as we were talking earlier before everyone got on, like how in the very beginning, when you start learning, 1,000 questions. And then this is kind of like another phase where you have so many questions as you get closer to getting that facility. I know Dan knows too from that and others, but but it's a good problem to have, as we were talking earlier. So it's great.
That's right. Like Casey said, right? Like I'm looking forward to the challenge, or however he phrased it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Definitely.
Look, you will never, Andrew, do you feel, let me put Andrew on the spot here, and then we're going to wrap up here in a few minutes. Andrew, do you feel like you know absolutely everything there is to know about storage?
No way.
And how much storage do you currently own?
7 facilities.
7 facilities. And Andrew, I don't feel like I know everything about storage, not even close. Like, I don't think you're ever going to get to a place where you just feel like you've mastered it. Maybe at some point you will. That's certainly possible. But we've been at this a handful of years, if not more, and we still feel like we're learning things. You're always, just have that mindset where there's always room for improvement and growth. So hopefully that gives you guys some encouragement that, like, do not wait until you have every answer before you take an action. Do the opposite. Take the action. You're going to learn so much more by doing. All right. Any parting thoughts before we wrap here? By the way, Dan, obviously this went deeper. So our next call is in 3 days. So my man, Tuesday, you're going to get the spotlight. All right.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Awesome. So if you got value from that video, you're definitely going to want to check out this video. And if you are looking to buy your first storage facility within the next 6 to 12 months, you're definitely going to want to dive into this playlist right here, where you're going to be able to watch video about showing you exactly how you can buy your first storage facility in the next 6 to 12 months. And if you're really serious and you want to take it a step further, head over to storagewins.com/apply.